Hello, hello, friends. So, personal question for you today. Do you suffer from any kind of GI issues, digestive issues, like SIBO or IBS or GERD, anything like that? Are you frustrated with weight gain? Are you dealing with any kind of mental health issues like anxiety or anything else that's bothering you? And has your doctor told you that there's nothing wrong? I am your self-care keto coach, Jess. I help women lose weight with a keto diet and a self-care mindset. And today I'm going live with a very special guest, Connie Rutledge. And she is a seasoned nutritionist who uses functional nutrition to help her patients feel better, heal their hormones, and heal their bodies. I'm going to be bringing her in right now. So as Connie's joining us, I'm so excited to be able to introduce her to all of you. Welcome, Connie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I got to know, are you decorated for Christmas yet?
Oh, no.
When do you decorate?
After Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I love Thanksgiving. Absolutely adore it. So,
yeah, me too. Me too. But my husband is a Christmas freak, like as in like Buddy the Elf level Christmas freak. And the day after Halloween every year busts out that Christmas tree. So we are already decorated over here.
Okay.
We do like a mixture of Thanksgiving and Christmas decorations. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's great. And you know what? Whatever works. And if he's into it, that's so great. Yeah.
It's true. And he's so into it. And now I have a 5-year-old daughter and it just brings her so much joy too. So I can overlook it for all the joy that happens here in this house.
Perfect.
Yes,
oh,
but I can't do the Christmas music yet. It annoys me. I'm like, I can't get into that yet. I'm not ready because then it's like 2 months out of the year we're singing the same songs. I can't do it.
Whew. I hear you, but I too have grandkids, and they are definitely into it. So lots of jingle bells singing at this moment.
Yes, it's fun to hear them sing it and mess up the words a little bit. They think they know the words, but it's so
cute.
Yeah.
So cute.
Well, Connie, I'm so excited to have you here. And I'd love for you just to introduce yourself briefly to the audience here. Tell us what you do, how long you've been doing it, just a little brief intro into you.
Well, first of all, I adore your work and it's so fun to collaborate. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you.
I'm a functional nutritionist. Kind of stumbled on this path. My daughter was ill as a junior high aged young woman moving into her hormonal, upswing, and she struggled a lot with hormones and cyclical migraines, and nobody could kind of touch what was going on with her. We had her into neurologists and every test came back clean. She was struggling with something called cyclical vomiting syndrome, which was horrendous. And I just kept asking, is it something she's eating? Blah, blah, blah. I was not into nutrition at all and struggled with weight my whole life and had a kind of unfortunate relationship with food, like many of us, through high school and college. That being said, I needed to figure out what the heck was going on. And I started, the internet was new. It was 2010-ish. And I went down that rabbit hole and got really knowledgeable in maybe gluten is the issue, maybe grains were the issue, maybe processed foods, maybe she wasn't getting enough protein, and nobody had any answers for me at that moment. All the doctors kind of tilt their head and go, well, you're probably wasting your time being concerned about that. Turns out she was very gluten intolerant, even grain intolerant, and it took years to get to the point where she was willing to change her diet and make some changes that made sense for her as a high school student. And, everyone's eating cookies and, the snack cart rolls around and it tastes good as we know. Right. Yeah. So I then, decided, well, I had countless moms calling me saying, I hear you fixed your daughter's migraines. What did you
Wow.
do?
Wow.
And I just thought, this is something that maybe I can be really instrumental in helping others with. So I went to a holistic college of natural medicine,
Mhm.
learning nutrition, and because that kind of spoke to me.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting because as you kind of asked a couple questions, I was kind of going back in the process of how things unfolded for me. And as a student of holistic nutrition, it was very plant-based
Right.
and very interesting. In the early 2000s, I was paying a lot of money to learn plant-based diet and uh, pretty much trying it on for size, and it didn't suit me real well. I
Yeah.
was struggling with a higher carb diet, even though it was beautiful plants
Right.
and really healthy foods that I was eating. I was not really comfortable. I was having anxiety. I was having trouble keeping my weight off. Definitely over exercising to remedy that. I struggled with weight, like I said, early on in my teens and early 20s, and compensated with a lot of exercise and low fat, low calorie
Right.
restriction, and then kind of got into my mid 40s and started having serious anxiety issues.
Mhm.
Um, and as a nutritionist, that's a little bit uncomfortable because I'm,
Right.
running classes and offering what I know, from my education, but it's not resonated, it's not resonating in my own body. So I kept
Yeah.
digging, and I probably practiced that for about 3 years. And then I found metabolic typing.
Mm.
And it was intriguing to me, okay, so I then offer that in my practice,
Mhm.
customized nutrition using a very, very detailed data driven process and assessment, asking all kinds of questions about the autonomic nervous system and the oxidative system and how food makes you feel, you know, in addition to silly questions which are, seem irrelevant, like your pupil size and the
Wow.
color of your skin, because our capillaries dilate and constrict, and our autonomic nervous system, which is everything that happens automatically, we don't have to think about, is in control of that. And so
Hmm.
we're looking for a dominant system in your body to determine how you should be eating, whether it's going to, make, you're going to metabolize a food acidic wise or alkaline.
Hmm.
And we're all a little bit different in how food kind of digests and creates the chemistry within us. So
Yeah.
I took the test and learned I'm like the Eskimo. I do much better on low carb, higher fats, good quality proteins. And when
Hmm.
I flipped my diet from a massive salad, in the afternoon with a little bit of white meat chicken and maybe some low fat dressing, and I was hungry all afternoon long, wanting cookies and candy and all this, then I switched it to grass fed beef patty with some blue cheese crumbles and a spinach salad with tons of oil, and it was so much less food.
Right.
My plate, and I remember finishing that meal, and I had clients coming in the afternoon. I was working at a health club, and I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm going to get through the afternoon because I don't
Right.
have enough food in my body, right?
Hmm.
And so I settled down, and I thought about it about 2 hours later, and I thought, my goodness, I feel so good.
Right.
And so, I mean, it went from there. And so I
Hmm.
really switched how I thought about how food affects us and practiced very differently. Um, and it worked out beautifully. And so I use that in my
Hmm.
practice, not with every client, but with the ones that seem to be struggling. And a lot of people don't really want to know all that information. They
Right.
just kind of want to be given a little bit of a roadmap, and they move on. But those that are struggling and having, no response to maybe a keto diet,
Yeah.
they might learn that the fat is very, very clogging. and it just dispels the energy that food is supposed to be giving them.
Right.
So that's how the customized nutrition came in. And then as I moved forward in my practice, I was still kind of disappointed, going into amino acid therapy, working with neurotransmitters, and supplementation to really support how your brain gets fed. Because if your digestion doesn't work real well and you're not eating the right kind of foods, then your brain isn't getting fed and you're not able to behave like you want to behave.
Right.
So there's so much, the body's so amazing. And then going into lab testing with the functional diagnostic nutrition, looking at hormones and gut health. And so it just gives us so much information to really balance and get clear on what the body might need is as far as healing. And I love offering those services, and it's a lot. And it's a deep dive into your, optimal health, but it's so worth it. And then as a result of all of that, I'm a very spiritual person, and I know that we're so much more than this physical body. Right. And I kind of dabbled in hypnosis, and I have done a couple different hypnosis modalities. One, the traditional, basic hypnotherapy courses, but I'm really kind of really proud of what I've developed with the Hypnourish. And it's usually after we've worked together and kind of developed a relationship, and then we can get really clear and comfortable in a setting that allows a deep mindful meditation that can offer and kind of uncover some deep-seated issues that are, it's just kind of the icing on the cake as you are understanding how you should be eating and maybe struggling a little bit with that, like we all do, but getting a deeper sense of the authentic you and how beautiful it is, just enjoying that part of being in the human body. And so that's kind of a snapshot of me and how I work. And it's fun to share it.
Thank you so much. This is all so fascinating that I have a million follow-up questions for you. But also, I just want to thank everybody who's joining live right now and ask you guys to put your questions in the chat feed if you have any, and I will pitch them to Connie. So the first thing that I wanted to dig into with you is the metabolic typing, because this is so curious and interesting that something about our biology or our DNA, our genetics, can actually teach us how it is that we're supposed to be eating. And that might look different than, your best friend, your cousin, whoever. And so we've always kind of we say that as a platitude, right? Like different strokes for different folks, but we don't really understand the mechanism behind it. So how is it that you, for example, should eat like an Eskimo when you live in San Diego? Can you break it down for us? Are you in San Diego? I know it's California, but I'm in
San Luis Obispo, about 6 hours up the state.
Okay.
With traffic.
But the climate is completely different.
Totally.
Yet your genetics are there inside of you running the show. And so it's so interesting. Can you explain to us what is the science of metabolic typing? How does it work? And can anybody have access to this?
Okay. So the science behind it is there are, this is information, science that was kind of studied in the 30s. Dr. Kelly, I could get way deep in the science, but we are genetically, just because we're blonde and blue-eyed doesn't mean our genetics in that deepest sense is going to be more, what we would think we need grains and those types of things. So what we're looking for in how the body kind of equates energy regulations as far as metabolism with food is the dominant system, the oxidative system or the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is our the sympathetic nervous system or the parasympathetic nervous system. So sympathetic nervous system is fight or flight. Parasympathetic is rest and digest. Okay, so we find a dominant system there. And
Okay.
the algorithms that are asked with the 15-page assessment, question assessment, is giving us, all kinds of information so that we can kind of target where your results lie. Okay, and I get that report after you send your assessment into the quote unquote metabolic typing computer. Okay, then I get results and it tallies up for me. I don't know your specific answers, and it doesn't matter. But it's also looking at your oxidative system. The oxidation rate is how fast carbohydrates break down in your system. Okay, so as I, tried on my plant-based diet for, a number of years and craved a steak, it was quite clear that something was wrong in how my body was processing the plant-based, food. And it turns out that my oxidative system is fast, and I burn through carbohydrates, and it hypes me up, and it's when we're oxidating too fast, it's like caramelizing our insides with sugar. And it's nothing, you don't ever want to, caramelize something like aging, like oxidation, when you cut an apple in half and it starts to turn brown. I mean, we want to preserve that. So I need to slow that oxidation rate by higher fats and proteins and less sugar. Okay. Somebody that is completely the same but different, and this will get confusing. It was confusing to me in the beginning, can have the same autonomic nervous system dominance. Okay. And they will eat very similar to me, but if they ate too much sugar, they want to take a nap and are bogged down by that fuel, right? Me, I'm hyped up. It's like peel me off the ceiling. I almost want to keep eating that way because I need to keep myself on that high, and I finally burn out. But the opposite on the spectrum, which is exactly the same diet, they need to eat the same as me, they will be, slow down and slow down and slow down and just almost be comatose, right? And conversely, with the carbohydrate types, it's the same, way. One's more autonomic, oxidative balance versus autonomic balance. So when we know that information from the assessment, then we can customize the diet to really suit you and maximize how your body uses food for fuel. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. This is so interesting because, I don't like when people demonize any one way of eating. And so, but you see it everywhere, right? Like it becomes almost like politics or religion, or it's just so divisive.
It's dogma for sure.
Yes, it's
for sure.
dogmatic, and people are out there saying like, this way of eating is, horrible for your health, and it's almost evil or immoral or whatever. And, you're leading people astray and you're spreading lies and yada, yada, yada. And we do it to both sides, whether it's like carnivore or vegan, right? Like from both ends of the spectrum.
Everywhere.
We're demonizing other people. And I've always been the type of person, although, of course, when I did find eating keto, I became very excited about it and wanted to tell everybody how amazing it is and so on and so forth. But I've always been careful to never demonize one way of eating because it might actually work for you. Who am I to say what's going to work for you and what's not going to work for you? I'm just curious if you do think it's working for you. And I'm always curious, how do you know if it's working for you when you haven't tried both? So
exactly.
For people who maybe have never looked into, metabolic typing or genetic testing or anything, like, would you recommend that people actually try both to see which one works best for them, like more plant-based or like low carb versus high carb? Or like, how would you advise somebody who didn't actually want to take a look at their genetics or anything?
Well, you are going to get information. I mean, our bodies are amazing, and our bodies give us information every minute of every day. And so I always offer, in fact, before you do the assessment or as you're doing the assessment, I'm involved in that process. And I always offer, first of all, if you're a breakfast eater, try a morning with a small glass of orange juice, maybe a half a cup of oatmeal, and a couple blueberries, right? Okay, and see how your body feels 2 hours after that meal. And the next day, then I want you to try maybe 2 eggs and a piece of good quality bacon, and maybe a quarter or a half a banana, and see how your body feels after that meal. So it's offering a fuel mix, a macronutrient ratio,
Right.
complete, flip flop. One's high carb, low fat, one's high fat, low carb, and let's see how your body responds, and trust that. And then you play with that, and it's so interesting to see just what your body offers you by way of information. And it's so funny. People have it's so interesting to watch somebody who has the the dogma or the understanding of even a keto diet, that they're struggling, maybe they're not losing weight, maybe they're feeling awful, but they know it's the way to lower body fat. But if it's not working for your genetics, I mean, that's so important to really determine that. And try different things, and your body's going to tell you one way or another. It might not always be cut and dried, because a lot of times you get to this point where there is some functional issues with, the microbiome, the gut, as far as how healthy it is, or, or your hormones are so far off because you haven't done it right for all these years. Oh my gosh, we have GMOs, we have toxins in the food, we have processed food that's really, clogging up the liver. And there's so much going on with stress in the body right now. It's not always cut and dried like I think it should be, so you might not get the information that you want to get from trying a N of one, experiment for a day or two. You might need to go back to the basics and really clean up your diet, eat real whole foods for 2 weeks, and then you can get a clearer picture of what needs to happen. But that's not easy. I mean, that's difficult to do, especially if you're struggling with health. And so that's why working with someone like you or I to kind of give them some training wheels, and let's try this for 3 days, and just muscle your way through it, and make a commitment to yourself. And that's where practitioners like us can really kind of hold their hand and give them more input. And we don't know it all. Your body knows your body's amazing, and it knows exactly what to do. We just need to give it the right tools to move forward in health.
So I've never done any kind of like metabolic typing or genetic looking at any of that stuff, but I've just kind of figured out on my own. Like I was a vegan, and now I've been keto. I was a vegan for 2 years. I was a vegetarian for 5 years. 2 of them I was a vegan. And now I've been keto for 8 years. And so, and the longer I've been keto, actually, the more animal heavy I am. So I eat more protein than ever before. I was kind of afraid of protein when I first started keto, as I'm sure a lot of people can resonate with. So also, as I've healed my body, I've brought back in more carbohydrates. And so now I might eat like an average of like 80 total carbs per day. Like I eat an apple and I'm still in ketosis and all of this. And I'm wondering how I would feel if at this point, like, let's just say I did this test with you and it says like, I should be eating plant-based. I should be eating low fat according to like my genetics or whatever. Like, how would I feel? What would I do? Would I change anything? I'm just kind of like thinking through that. And I'm wondering if you've ever had an experience with a client where they're kind of like, no, I don't really think that's true. Totally. Like, so, and how do you deal with that?
That's such a good question. And I just had a lady the other day who was so disappointed. And let me tell you, I was in that boat in the beginning. I couldn't believe it. And I was so skeptical. There's a way around anything. I mean, if you truly wanted to be a vegan and you were more of a hot, fast oxidizer like me, we could customize it to use more plant-based proteins and give you the fuel that you need. It's not going to be
Mm-hmm.
easy that way. And it's going to require a lot of, in my mind, processed powders and things like that, which I'm not a huge fan of that. I like whole food, but it can be done. And I also suggest that maybe that maybe you rethink the fact that every metabolic type needs protein. And it's so interesting how even 30%, even the carbohydrate, the strongest carbohydrate type needs about 30% protein in their daily requirement. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's so interesting to think that, we have swung, of course, the pendulum, and we're so extreme as Americans for the most part in how we think about things. If a little is good, more is better, which isn't, necessarily true in all instances. But I always like to say that, just give it a chance and let your body heal. And so many people tell me that they are surprised at how easy it is to follow an eating plan that is metabolically sound for their body. And they didn't think it would be as easy as it actually is. I mean, when you feel good, I mean, honestly, it's amazing how easy it is for you to follow something, that might seem impossible in the beginning.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And actually it's funny because I'm kind of convinced that because I eat higher protein, that's why I can actually bring in more carbohydrates, because of that protein to energy ratio. And when I was a vegan, I mean, I was probably eating, I don't even know, like I was not doing, like I wasn't seeking out plant protein. I knew nothing about nutrition. I was just like, eat stuff that's not animal.
So typical. Like, exactly.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Well, Jess, I would say that probably the reason why you are able to incorporate more carbohydrates now and keep your weight where you want it, and that's what I'm assuming is happening, right?
Yeah.
Is because what you've accomplished by eating lower carb, very much keto, is that you've reduced the pathogenic gut bugs because they feed on the sugar. And that's another whole genre of my practice, looking at gut bugs and pathogens and clearing that. Because when you have inflammation in the body due to pathogenic overload, it's just this, overarching inflammatory, cascade that is debilitating to the body. And it breaks down so many, I mean, it makes you think wonky. It makes your body feel so bogged down. And the fact that you pretty much starved all those bugs, right, by eating very, very low sugar, because they feed on sugar, dietary sugar. And that way you're now much healthier, metabolically speaking, and microbiome wise, because those gut bugs have quorum sensing. And when they are in the body, I mean, they are the fungus, the parasites, the bacteria are banding together, creating biofilms, protecting themselves, communicating, and making you eat things that you don't really want to be eating because it's feeding them. And it's amazing how that works. Yeah.
So that kind of like makes me wonder, how can you tell the difference between like nature and nurture here? Like if you're asking these, kind of like genetic questions and about the autonomic nervous system and all of this, and then you're also asking, well, how do certain foods make you feel? Like, have you ever found like a mismatch where like maybe the metabolic type is like, okay, ideally, optimally, once we get your body healed, you would probably do better with lower fat, higher carb, keep your protein. But right now, because you're in such a state of dysbiosis or disease, we actually need you to eat more low carb and keto. Yes. Like, have you experienced that? And how can you tell the difference there?
Oh, it's such a good question. You're so smart, because there
I'm just curious. Thank you.
Yeah, no, these are wonderful questions. It does happen when you are kind of influenced in one way that is not your genetic propensity. it becomes your, what's happening within your body is kind of a temporary scene, if you will. And when we answer the questions with the assessment for how you are feeling now, and we get a result, and we move into that arena of, dietarily giving you the information, start that. Typically you heal, and then things begin to come, the wheels kind of come off a little bit, and we then reassess, because you are in a temporary state. Your body has become so overwhelmed by, I'll call it dis-ease. Typically you're not, diseased, but you are having unfortunate, symptoms. And once you clean it all up, you then can start, like you did, add in more carbs, and kind of maybe you arrive at the middle where you're not kind of way over in this category, and you become a little more balanced. And that definitely is, that's where we want to be. Balance is everything in this body, for sure. And it's not easy to accomplish, but in this day and age, people are really suffering because of what we think is healthy, or we're told how to eat, or we're on drugs that are really influencing the liver, and giving us just so many signals in the body. It's vast, unfortunately.
Yeah. I almost think that it's really fun, and it makes life really interesting to just constantly be tinkering and wondering, how good can I feel? And I have a colleague that I really respect. She's another keto coach. And I had her on the podcast a few episodes back because she started reintroducing carbohydrates. She lost a lot of weight and really healed her body with keto. But then she got to the point where she actually lost her period. And she was not feeling great, especially around certain times of her cycle. And so the more that she introduced carbs back in, the better she felt. And so here I am, I'm someone like, I was still eating super low carb up until earlier this year. And honestly, it was her experiments where she was like testing her blood sugar after eating certain foods. And I was like, I wonder. And I just decided to try some things, but I was never actually experiencing any kind of negative feedback from eating keto. I just decided to try it out of curiosity. And so I'm finding that I'm feeling fine either way. Like I'm fine with eating super low carb, almost carnivore. And I'm also fine eating like 80 carbs a day, and I'm having fruit twice a day and things like that. And it's just kind of fun to just get to decide, like, well, what do you feel like doing? You're safe either way, because I think we get so scared.
Well, the fact that you're kind of switching it up, I mean, the body wants to be kept guessing. And if you think of early humans, they didn't have fruit all year round. They didn't have, so we are designed to keep it guessing. And I will always say, nothing is forever. Everything, the body keeps changing, and the seasons change because we need to feed our bodies differently. And so, there's this kind of flip-flop back and forth of, as long as you're eating real food, honestly, as long as you're eating real food, because that real food has the messages that the body needs, hormonal shifts, and all of those are, fuel mix is all determined by what you're eating. And when you're eating processed food, you're not getting that information, right? It's being stored as fat. And unfortunately, that's, where many of us are. But when you're eating real food, depending on, it could be meat, it could be fat, it could be, plants, fruit, even good quality grains. If you're using that fuel effectively by, getting plenty of exercise and not overeating, then you're going to benefit from that. And like, some of us need more parameters than others to kind of keep us on the straight and narrow. I mean, some people are completely triggered by eating honey, if you will, or bananas, or something that's even, quote unquote healthy. But when we're appreciating kind of where we tend to feel best, then it's the 80-20 rule. You can enjoy yourself 20% of the time and go out to dinner and go wild with cheesecake or, whatever it is that you really enjoy, or French fries. and be so fine, just getting back on the wagon the next day, appreciating that you do get to be diverse and your body is going to be fine as a result of you, enjoying some treats. But when you're doing everything right, for the most part, that tweaking is so important for a lot of reasons. So
yeah. I love that you bring it back to eat real food, because sometimes we tend to think of like, oh, especially for those of us who have transferred off of a standard American diet to actually eating keto. And now we are focused, hopefully, on eating more whole foods and not just a bunch of keto products or whatever. But, in the past, doing keto, I would have thought of a high carb, low fat diet as like margarine and snack wells, like, because that's what I ate growing up on a high carb, low fat diet. Like, and that's not healthy either. Just because the macronutrients are high carb and low fat, it doesn't mean that the quality of your food is anything natural to what you should be eating and what your metabolic code is telling you that you need.
Yeah, it's true. Well, and you brought the whole thing up with your friend and her kind of feeling better. She lost her period with keto. That's a true issue with the adrenal glands. Some of us need more carbohydrates to create the glucose to really feed our adrenals and just metabolic processes. And when we're eating very low carb for a very long time, it will affect, well, not always, but it usually affects us in ways. I mean, if we could have no stress, and if we could have no negative impact from environmental toxins, then we would probably be better suited for maybe lower carb longer term. And we're all genetically different, but you're right. As your friend added in healthy carbs, she felt better. So I'll just say that it's so easy to just tweak and learn as you kind of play with the macros and give your body more of what it needs, and then play with maybe 2 days a week you take them out, or 1 day a week you completely fast. There's so many opportunities for healing.
Yeah. We're so bio individual, but I want to get back to the protein conversation, because I have been so convinced in the last several years that if everybody just got enough protein, that then they could play around with fat versus carbs, and probably be okay. And so, I love that you were saying that even for the people that, can do high carb, low fat, they should still be getting 30% of their energy from protein. And I know that you are an amino acid
therapist.
Okay, great. So could you give us a little primer on what amino acids are? How do we get them? Why are they important? People ask me this question a lot. And so because I'm always touting protein. So could you share with us, and how do you do therapy with amino acids?
It's so fun. First of all, when I start working with clients, I always offer, most of my clients are women and middle-aged women, and most people are not getting enough protein. Because for a lot of reasons, maybe they don't feel so good when they're eating protein because it's hard to break down, because their digestive capabilities are not robust enough. So it's like, then chew your food well. Maybe decide to use a digestive enzyme to kind of break down protein and help your body with that process. So I will always offer, I will say, get 20 grams of protein per meal in the beginning. At least that's 60 grams of protein. That's lower end protein wise, middle of the road. Amino acids are the breakdown of that protein. Say you have a chicken breast and you metabolize that and you get all kinds of amino acids. I went into amino acid therapy because I was so disappointed in the progress of my clients in their ability to follow a diet, even myself. The information within the neurotransmitters is incredible. Using a nutrient like L-glutamine L-glutamine is a breakdown of, it's an amino acid, so it's a
Mm-hmm.
breakdown of that chicken breast, if you will.
Yeah.
Using a L-glutamine powder to nourish the brain, kind of shutting off carb cravings and healing the gut at the same time is just an amazing nutrient to offer someone who's struggling with carb cravings. Okay. It just settles you down. And those are the fun parts of the amino acid therapy that I've learned. We also use something called GABA. The GABA center in the brain is going to calm you down when you have that monkey mind, or you just can't quit thinking about the cookies in the cabinet, and you're just always, thinking 50 thoughts at once. The nutrient GABA can be utilized, and it goes straight into the neurotransmitter to fill that up, so it calms you down. Wow. 5-HTP is the precursor to serotonin. Serotonin is that feel-good nutrient that the brain uses. The happy, it's not a hormone, but it's the happy nutrient that is found in your SSRIs that are prescribed ad nauseum for, all kinds of issues, depression, anxiety. But I use targeted amino acids to take several times a day to support the neurotransmitters so that you can have the behavior that you're looking for to be able to stick to your diet, to be able to think like you want to think and have the clarity and the willpower, if you will, that, is needed to get you over the hump. And then we, have more success as a result of, where we go moving forward in the process.
Yeah. Well, that is fascinating. And I'm curious if fats and carbs interact with neurotransmitters the same way. Do they, or do
questions? They not? Well, certainly the carbohydrates would interact, and that would be more because when you're craving sugar, your brain, in addition to your microbes, okay, are needing something. So the willpower that, when we can kind of muscle through 2 weeks of a diet and then fall off the wagon, that tells me that our neurotransmitters are used to functioning with a certain amount of nutrients. And I'm going to say glucose is a big part of that. Mm-hmm. So your brain is used to feeling a certain way, and it's going to want to continue that. I mean, homeostasis is where the body wants to stay. It doesn't want to move any which way because it takes extra work. That being said, the brain chemistry is not probably getting what it's needed because either you're not eating it, or you're not able to break it down small enough to get the nutrients necessary for brain health. So you can utilize. Okay, I'm getting off the question here. You were asking about carbs, but when we eat that carb, it's typically, if it's processed, it's going to go straight into sugar, and your brain is going to get the message that, okay, we have what we need, and we feel comfortable, right? Mm-hmm. So you're gonna be, unfortunately, you're gonna beat yourself up because you ate the popcorn or you ate the, whatever it was, the cake, but your body immediately feels good. Right. Then 10, 15, 30 minutes later, you feel awful because, mm-hmm. You're used to being up here, and then that blood sugar and that fuel was used, and now you're back down here. And so, you're wanting it again. So by filling up the neurotransmitter with a nutrient that is necessary to kind of sustain that level of function, we are able to keep on the straight and narrow, stick to our diets and not sabotage ourselves in that fashion like we have in the past.
Yeah, so basically protein gets the job done better without any kind of negative repercussions, like with the carbs.
On so many levels, yeah. On so many levels. Yeah.
That's interesting. What about fat? Does fat interact with our brain neurotransmitters?
It doesn't. Fat definitely keeps us satiated and it keeps the cell membrane very, very pliable. So it helps with the interaction of the nutrients going in and out of the cell and the integrity of the cell. So fats are essential because our body doesn't, we have to eat good fats, but we don't make fat. We store it, but we have to eat it. And we have to eat quality fats that are going to really support us in the way that the body uses that raw material for for our body's, membrane stuff, all that metabolic talk, as far as how the body utilizes stuff and makes the actual body itself.
Yeah. Okay. So do you have any like vegan clients that you actually, through supplementation or plant sources, like are they actually able to meet all of their amino acid therapeutic needs?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't work long term with vegans. They don't seem to, want to stick around when they're not really willing to kind of be a little more open. Yeah. It can be done. And there are really amazing companies offering vegan supplements. But I don't think, even flaxseed, we don't convert it into like 20% of us or 30% of us, I'm not sure exactly, are able to have that enzymatic conversion to get the raw material correct. But I always say that, there is no vegan culture that lasted through, evolution. If you look back, there's just no tribe that didn't use animals in one way or another. Yeah. And I like to look at history. I love, the evolution of how things kind of came to be. And that's kind of an interesting, I don't know. That's a tough one. Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that perspective because it's just a different way to look at it. And it's not without any judgment or anything. It's just kind of like looking back at history in a factual kind of way. And, but I appreciate that you're still holding space for the fact that it can be done if somebody is really dead set on it, but you have to be open. And I remember feeling like as a vegan, people would say to me like, you're missing important nutrients, or what about B12 or just whatever. They would say stuff that I didn't really know about. And I would literally just block it out because I was so convinced of what I wanted to do that I was not open-minded about it in the slightest. And I'm so glad that somehow over time, honestly, the thing that made me switch back, people ask me sometimes like, why did you start eating meat again? And it was because I was so dominated by fear. I thought for sure if I ate a bite of meat that I would get sick. Like I thought for sure, I was so afraid. I was terrified of it. In the same way, sometimes people that are eating keto, they can become so terrified of carbohydrates. I've seen this happen and I've flirted with it myself at different times in my life. Like I thought for sure when I was pregnant and they wanted me to do the glucose tolerance test that for sure I would get sick. I would get a migraine. I didn't feel great, but I was okay. But we get ourselves so blind. We put blinders on to just believe what it is that we want to believe. And that's why it's so important to, if you are not feeling good, allow yourself to tinker with it a little bit, like release the strong grip on it and, be open-minded to the fact that maybe you can learn something new and actually feel so much better if you did.
Well, totally. And I so appreciate, animals deserve to be treated well. And factory farm, and factory farm animals are not, probably, I always say, so I'm a nutritionist and I'm a holistic nutritionist and I'm a meat eater, but I eat very responsibly. And, then people ask, do you go out to dinner? And it's like, well, occasionally, yes. But I appreciate that the world's not a perfect place. Right. And I'm going to get, if I go to In-N-Out Burger on a trip or something, I'm going to get not a very high quality piece of meat, but that's called living in the world. And I'm very practical in that way. I appreciate you if you want to, remain vegan and I will support you and I will offer you every tool I have to support you in a way that makes sense for you. And that's kind of how I, kind of, I'll just make, I'll give you the information I have, and I'll explain why I have that information, you know, and what it means to me. And then you make up your mind. No, nobody's perfect. And the best part about all of this is we never get it done. We have to eat for the rest of our lives, and our body gives us information as a result of the eating whatever it is. And we can recover just as easily. It might take a day or 2 or 3 or 4, you know, as we get older and wiser, we choose differently, possibly, but it's as simple as that. You know, it doesn't have to be difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of like encapsulating the metabolic typing thing. So basically, are we kind of saying like, however our ancestors ate for most of human history, we're still carrying that within our bodies, and that's probably how we're going to be best suited to eat, regardless of where we happen to live now, whatever climate we're in right now?
It has nothing to do with our climate. Yes, it has to do with our genetics and those dominant systems that were designed, you know, in the beginning. And it's quite interesting to just appreciate that fact, and that there's wiggle room in that. But yeah, when you have the basics, just like anything, you can kind of decide how you step in what direction, and give the body a chance to let you know how it's doing, and move forward after that. Yeah.
Okay. So I really want to give our listeners some empowering information, because you know, I love on your website, like the first thing you say is like, are you dealing with all these, like, are you dealing with digestive issues? Are you dealing with stubborn weight gain? Like, and basically, you know, here's the driver. Has your doctor told you that nothing is wrong? And so many people are kind of get into a place where it's like, they're not going to get any answers unless they become their own advocates. Like you did with your daughter. Like you took to the internet and started, you know, self-teaching as much as you possibly could, because unfortunately conventional medicine was telling you like, wait, we don't know. You probably just shouldn't worry about it. You know, it's fine. Put her on birth control or whatever it is that they probably told you to do. And so what are some labs or functional tests that you are looking at right now that possibly, if we were our own advocates, that we could get our hands on and just ask for? Like, does insurance cover things that just aren't being offered to us? And like, what should we be asking our doctors for if we're not getting answers?
Good question. So first of all, I feel like if you're struggling, food first. And then second of all is if you do have access, you know, you're going to your doctor, ask for, depending on what's going on, if it's metabolic issues like your thyroid's off, or you're having trouble with weight, and you know, it's stubborn, and you're having digestive issues, I want to know the you know, your fasting glucose for sure. I want to know I want you, if you're able to go in and ask your doctor for a complete thyroid panel, a comprehensive thyroid panel. That's not just the TSH. It is the free T4, 3 T3, and you can look it up on the internet. You can even order it on your own. I'm looking at your inflammatory markers, the A1C and things like that. I like to look at hormones. Okay, a lot of doctors don't really just, you know, automatically cue those up. Your sex hormones, estradiol, progesterone, and testosterone. Insulin levels are always interesting if you're struggling with weight. And some of those, and then just looking at the CBC, there's amazing information on how your liver's functioning, and are you, you know, is there an infection present with the white blood cells, red blood cells, all of that? I mean, that's a little more nuanced, but it certainly is worth a gander at. And if you know, I've got lots and lots of information just to offer with nutrients and cleaning up the gut, to just kind of see what's going on with that type of information that's probably, you know, you're doing once a year with your doctor. And you can ask for more tests that probably should be covered by insurance. The others are more self, you know, out-of-pocket expenses, with maybe a gut test, stool test. I use GI map, and then the Dutch test looking at dried urine, metabolites of hormones and cortisol. So that's kind of a, you know, a broader sense to kind of looking deeper at all things health, you know, all
Right.
systems. Worth
Right.
doing for sure.
That's really good to just kind of like put some of those words out there in people's ears, like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
you haven't done everything you can do yet. If your
Yeah,
doctor is telling you that, we don't know, but they
yeah,
haven't done all of these tests, there's so much more that we could be looking at. And a lot of times it does take going to a functional practitioner to get
yeah.
some of the answers that you need. So how would you describe what you do as different than just like seeing a regular nutritionist or dietitian to try to lose weight? Like, what if your doctor says, if you say, I'm having trouble losing weight, no matter what I do, doc, I just can't lose weight. And they write you a little, referral to see a dietitian. Like, what would be the difference between what you're doing versus what this person's doing?
Well, the difference between me and maybe a dietitian, and there are some really good dietitians out there these
Mm-hmm.
days, fortunately. I don't have that training because I didn't align with the information of conventional wisdom. I'm going to look more into the functional ways, looking, at whole foods instead of more processed foods, and get really streamlined in maybe offering something for glucose control, like maybe a berberine supplement,
Mm-hmm.
maybe something to really maximize cortisol, maybe looking at something to maximize a nutrient that might seem deficient.
Mm-hmm.
Just from your symptoms because you'll fill out an intense, pretty lengthy intake form before we meet. So I can look at your symptoms and just say, all right, what's going on here? And have you ever thought about this? A lot of it is science in my, I have the science camp. I also have the intuitive camp where I can kind of sense what's going on. And it's not woo-woo, it's symptom driven. And yeah, we're humans, and the interaction between the two of us is going to get pretty, it becomes a big piece to what I do, just having the intuition and using that in appreciating, asking you targeted questions so that we can get down to what makes sense, and
Mm-hmm.
and try something new if you have not tried it.
Yeah.
That's a fun piece that's different than going into somebody more conventionally trained. And
Yeah.
it's fun, it works out well. And gosh, tweaking is what I'm all about.
Mm-hmm.
The way to optimize is kind of a nice segue into just kind of building health and giving you tools to be able to
Mm-hmm.
play with, after we've quit working together, and use
Mm-hmm.
forever. So
Yeah.
that's how I work.
I love that because I mean, basically what I'm hearing is that the way that you're set apart is that because you do a functional approach and you're so data driven, you're
Yeah,
running all of the tests that we could possibly be looking at to
right.
try to get the information that we need for the root cause
Yeah,
behind this. And so that's what
right.
most functional practitioners will do. But I also love that you're pointing out that you're a holistic healer,
Yeah,
really, and that you
yeah,
rely on your intuition as well. And so for maybe some people that are like, giving the
yeah,
side eye right now, like what
yeah.
is she talking
What?
about?
Yeah.
So I love this. I'm so into this, and as a coach, I use my intuition regularly with people as well. But how would you define intuition? Like, and how do you know when to use it, or when does it arise? Maybe you're not deciding to use it, but it's just arising for you. And in terms of like following intuition and looking at data, because they seem, maybe to the layman's, listening ear, like those don't seem like, they seem like opposite, right?
It's not opposite at all. It's a holistic and integrative approach to just appreciate. We do have the benefits of looking at a scientific, data driven test result, and yet we're human beings, and we're unique, and there's such intrinsic in information that kind of bubbles up. So working together, You know, that's why we sit in front of each other, although, you know, I'm distance, you know, we're via Zoom or something, but there's still a connection. And offering what comes up intuitive in me to just kind of put it out there. I have no problem with that. That's the gift of you know what I can offer, knowing, and it is a deep knowing within me that I trust. You know, I knew it when my daughter was sick, and I knew it when, you know, I know it every day, and it's something that I can't deny, and it's something that has gotten stronger and stronger within me as I evolve as a human being on the planet. And I feel so strongly that is, you know, it is your right to feel good in your body. And if I can't offer what I'm, you know, sensing, then what's the point? You know, we can go to doctors every day of the week, but we can't get that kind of intuitive, and maybe they use it too, but I just feel like there's a holistic quality about what I offer in you know, that's different than, and sets me apart from other practitioners.
Yeah.
So I'll just stand beside that all day long and trust that what comes up within me makes sense. So.
Yeah, and I also love that you're using the word offer, because you know, it's really all about like, hey, this is what I'm sensing, you know, does this resonate with you? Take it or leave it, you know. I mean, we're all humans, and some days we might be off a little bit, you know, like maybe it's not going to resonate, but it's just an offer. And you know, then if the other person picks it up, then you can kind of move forward with that if they're saying, yeah, actually that really does resonate. But you know, I think you and I understand what we're saying to each other, but maybe for the skeptic, like, could you give an example of, you know, obviously, you know, anonymous, but maybe a client that you're thinking of where the data wasn't getting you to where you needed to be, and the intuition is what took you where you needed to be? Can you give an example?
Oh my gosh, it happens every day, but a prime example. Well, I think okay, I'll say there was a client who could not give up smoking. And I've got the scientific sense that it was a kind of a knee-jerk habit, that, you know, maybe the neurotransmitter was deficient. And that's information that is scientific.
Yes.
But the intuitive piece is, okay, the GABA is going to be, you know, exactly what you need. And we're going to kind of give your body a sense of kind of the calmness that the GABA is going to give to you. So we're going to try it. Now that there's scientific, but there's a wisdom of, you know, of how it works in the body, and how it makes sense for utilizing it for so many ways of healing, if you will. It's a difficult question to answer, Jess, you know, because it's so etherical. I mean, it's not concrete, and yet it makes sense as far as, you know, knowing.
Yeah. Interesting. I appreciate you at least trying to put it into words, but it sounds like sometimes you just have an inner knowing as to what is the best medicine for someone.
Exactly. Whereas, you know, someone else would go to get the nicotine gum and quit the habit of smoking. Well, that's, you know, I'll go one link deeper, and just, you know, with what I understand to make sense, and we'll offer that. So that's you know, that's where my brain goes.
Yeah. And so while we're getting into this, you know, topic of maybe bringing in like more of a spiritual component, because like you said earlier during your introduction, like you're convinced that we're so much more than just physical beings.
So much more.
There's a part of us above and beyond, you know, our physical bodies. And, you know, maybe some people believe that, maybe some people don't. I know you do. I do too. I believe that, you know, we're a soul with a body, not a body with a soul.
Totally.
And so we can get ourselves really out of whack in our bodies when we have spiritual problems.
it can manifest in our
Sure.
physical body. And so I was so intrigued while I was checking you out that you use hypnosis as a way to maybe address an underlying spiritual component. On your website, you listed about the Hypnourish, and while I have some questions about it, I noticed that you had like a question prep checklist, kind of like how to best prepare for a hypnosis session. And it offers all of these questions that you might want to bring to the session. And it goes above and beyond health, and it addresses like work and career, and even like, what is my life purpose, and what is God, and like all these things. And I'm like, wow, okay, so like, what are you doing with people with those questions? And like, maybe could you give us an example, like a story of somebody who found really what they needed? They weren't able to implement the strategies, even though we were all kind of convinced this is what I need to do. I need to stop smoking, whatever it might be, but I just can't seem to do it until we get through the spiritual block. Could you share that with us? Like, so what are you doing with people? And then maybe like a success story.
Okay, so the Hypnosis kind of evolved with the fact that spending time with the clients and giving them a minute to quiet down and get really clear on, first of all, feeling that peaceful state and being completely relaxed in the hypnosis, process is a gift in itself. I mean, it's a deep meditative state that is very calm and peaceful and lovely. And we just don't get there, on our day to day. And so appreciating that opportunity to just kind of be in a very, very delicious, loving state, and offering the client an opportunity to kind of heal in that moment, with a tender, look at who they really are, that to get rid of the conscious mind, then that subconscious comes through, and it's just such a beautiful opportunity. And time, it's all about time. That being said, I always kind of have the questions from the client, because it's all about them seeking from them. It really has nothing to do about me. I facilitate for them. And so they'll come with their questions, why am I not able to stop smoking? And why do I feel this anxiety? And why can't I lose the weight? And why can't I, why am I self-sabotaging? And so many times together, because it's an interactive process. Hypnosis is so misunderstood. It's so simple, yet it's so feared by many, because it's just a conversation that we have together. And you're kind of not really looking at me. You're not looking at anything. You're quietly lying down and just in this very secure state where your, access to your, I will say, higher self is so prominent, and the answers just come, they flow out of you so beautifully. And then we can play together with, for example, the woman with the smoking. This is just recent, so that's why it's right up in my conscious mind here. She was so stressed, and she was on medication for anxiety, and she was smoking cigarettes, which, is doing damage on a lot of levels. And she was drinking coffee, didn't really appreciate that coffee had pesticides, amping up her whole system, lighting up her system, if you will. We did the metabolic typing. We got through that, whole diet piece. She felt better as a result, wanted to move forward and continue healing with the Hypnosis session. And she talked about being, so tight in her work environment. Okay. And she was not breathing deeply. She was anxious. And the information came through that, that cigarette, and when she smoked, she would go outside. So the information came up of all she really needed was to go outside and take a deep breath of fresh air. The cigarette had nothing to do with it. So she kind of figured out for herself that she could even take the cigarette in her fingers without lighting it and, take a drag of nothing to unleash her body's, all of those biochemicals that are going to make her feel better, give her what she needs, and maybe she would reduce the amount of cigarettes she'd be smoking, in addition to quitting, shortly thereafter. That being said, it's an opportunity and a modality to just give yourself the gift of time and play with what you never have played with before.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And like, could you maybe give like a scientific explanation of how hypnosis truly works? It's not just a spiritual experience, but like what's happening in our brainwave activity that's different from just like what we're going about day to day right now.
Well, yeah, those theta waves are so therapeutic. And when you're in a state of fight or flight 24 hours a day, to give yourself a half an hour or an hour of something much different, much like sleep. Sometimes you get there in sleep, not always. It's something that you can do on your own. And once you appreciate how nurturing that is for your brain chemistry, for your whole body, it might just kind of give you, just like exercise, you finish up and you're like, oh my gosh, I should do this more often because I feel great. The meditative state of hypnotherapy or just meditation is going to do the same thing within the brain. So that's something that, without getting too technical into brain chemistry, our brain is it's the circuit board for us, and we need to nourish it just like everything else in our body. So I highly recommend all of it.
So are we, you mentioned a theta state. Are we like, when we're awake right now, like you and I, are we in like an alpha state right now? Is that what it would be called?
Most of the time. Yeah. I mean, it's without going back to, the science books, I'm forgetting the actual terms, but yeah, we're in a very sympathetic state, fight or flight. We are on. We're we're not nurturing that rest and digest parasympathetic dominant piece of our autonomic nervous system. That just doesn't happen often enough. It needs to be 50-50. How many times are we doing absolutely nothing, just really kind of leaning into that rest and digest? That's where we go to nurture. That's where we go to reboot. That's where we go to rebuild. And that is essential to the balance in our everyday existence. That's why, we're quote unquote, the history is, that prayer before a meal. You should sit down for your meal. You should be ready to receive fuel. And the same thing with the brain chemistry, with sitting down to reboot in that meditative state and to create that balance. So you're not running from the tiger 24 hours a day. You're actually gearing up to receive and be rebooted, if you will.
Yeah. I was doing a little bit of research on it on my own previously and learning about the different brain states that we can possibly be in. And so we're like in this alert brain state right now. And then when we go to sleep, we kind of go into like what feels like an unconscious state. I mean, we go off to dreamland or whatever, but when we're in deep sleep, like we're just, what are we doing? Sleep is so interesting, right?
Yeah.
So, but then there's this kind of in between state. And I don't know, I think this is the theta state where you're kind of in between being alert and being asleep. And what I found to be so interesting was learning that children stay in this state for most of their childhood. And so like my daughter is 5 right now. And so I think it's like up until like age 7 or 8. children are able to be in this state most of the time, which is why they're so easily influenceable, and they're so able to pretend play and use their imagination. And like their imagination feels real to them. Like, it's so cute. We just had, my husband's parents over, and my daughter's playing in her room, and she's just chatting up a storm, like talking, making different people have different voices. Like, she does this in the shower constantly. Like, it's so cute to just kind of listen in, because we're supposed to be able to do this, and we don't do it anymore because we condition ourselves out of it being logical. But she's just playing with her imagination, living in this whole other reality that she's created. And at some point, we turn this off. But the thing about it is, like, children's, belief systems, everything that we believe, our subconscious mind is being formed, like written in code in our brain between the ages of 0 and 7. And so we can rewrite that if we can get ourselves back into that same type of theta state, which is kind of what's happening with hypnosis, right? Or when somebody's having a spiritual experience, right? And so that's why it can be so life altering.
And it can be relied on because you can recreate it. Yeah. And that's where I want you to just appreciate how easy it is to get into that theta state, and that you can do it yourself. You can turn on a YouTube sound bath, or you can listen to a hypnotherapy. I've got a couple on my website, and just sit for 10 minutes and just recreate and get back into that theta state. That's so nurturing. And so, it's a divine right that we just don't appreciate, to be in that euphoric state of mind. And it should happen daily, at least once a day. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I love that you're saying that, because it really is such a beautiful untapped area that we don't spend a lot of time accessing. And I love that you said that it's a divine right, because it's part of being human. We have the capability to do it. We just leave it on the table because we want to scroll Instagram, or we want to, get one more thing checked off of our to-do list or whatever. But it's such a life-changing practice to get yourself into that state at least once a day.
Well, being in a human body is difficult. This is no joke. It's hard right now, especially with everything that we've dealt with in the past year, 2 years. And having the capabilities and the understanding and the awareness that we're so much more than this human body, it's so important, in my opinion, to just nurture that. And even if you're in an unhealthy body, you can access something so much more delicious and appreciate and have the feelings of wholeness in spite of where you are in your body. So many of us are uncomfortable in our body because maybe we're bigger than we want to be, or we have pain, or, whatever's going on. That doesn't matter. When you are in that state, you are euphoric, and it has nothing to do with your physicalness. And so give yourself, practice that, and the rest of it becomes a little easier as a result of getting back. Not that you ever should leave your body. I'm not suggesting I want you out of your body, because I don't. Right. I feel like we should be in our body, and it's very important to just kind of balance it all. Again, that balance in everything is critical, and appreciate the access that we have, as human beings on the planet, just remembering that we are so much more, and that's essential.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I like that you're trying to explain it that way. You don't leave your body. It's just almost like the protector part, or the critic in you finally shuts off. And like, for me, the only thing that I can equate it to is like spiritual experience where it shuts off, or sex is like the only 2 times that part of my brain shuts up. The part of me that is just like, you got to do this, you didn't do this right, and yada yada, that inner critic, always thinking of the next to-do list, the protector part of me, it's trying to serve me, but in so many ways, I just need a freaking break. And those seem to be the only 2 times.
Yes.
It's just quiet inside of my head.
Yes. Yeah. And you're just along for the ride, and it's easy, And it's, you know, something that is our, you know, something we should actually put on the to-do list, you know? Yeah. I love it.
Oh, Connie, thank you so much. This has been such a fun conversation. And I would love it if you could share, where can people get in touch with you if they'd like to learn more about how they can work together with you as a functional nutritionist, or even just some of this hypnosis or spiritual component that we've been talking about? Yeah, tell us more. Where can people find you and get in touch with you?
So my website is ConnieRutledge.com, and I offer a 15-minute discovery call, just like you, to see if we're compatible, and you can get your questions answered, and I'll, you know, we'll decide what makes sense moving forward. My Instagram, obviously, here we are with Connie Rutledge Wellness. And, you know, my number's available on the website. Text me, email me, whatever, and let's get together and see what we can do to expand your horizons, and explore what makes sense moving forward for healing, and so you can feel good in your body.
Yeah, awesome. That's what it's all about. I know we both have that same mission of just wanting people to feel the best that they can possibly feel. And we're just here trying to remove the blockages along the way and walk the journey with people. So again, Connie, thank you so much. This has been a really, really, really fun conversation, and I appreciate your time.
Jess, thank you so much.
Okay, have a fantastic rest of your day.
Okay, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.